Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Balegambete, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Thandi Modise, Deputy President of the Republic in absentia because his child is ill and has just had an operation, and we wish his family well in the difficult time that they are going through. Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Premiers, MECs, councillors of our local government, And we got involved through a call that had been made to organize pro-Frelimo rallies. The chairperson of the Students' Representative Council, Sidibe, who was the president, rather, of the SRC, got deeply immersed in this, and so did a number of us. And following the pro-Frelimo rallies that we held, the then government decided to conduct a swoop on all of us. Now, my arrest was quite dramatic because Sidibe, the president of the SRC, had been arrested, and he had, we decided to march on the Mankweng police station, which Honorable Malema will be most familiar with. We marched on that police station as a student body, and during that march, the SRC went in, and some of us stayed outside. And they then decided that they wanted to have me arrested. They then said, call Ramaphosa in because he can shed light on whatever. And the SRC members, without knowing that this was going to happen, called me in, and as soon as I sat down, they said, you can all leave now. Ramaphosa is now under arrest. And I was arrested, transported to Pretoria Central Prison, where I was in solitary confinement for a solid 6 months before anyone came to talk to me. And at the time, my father was a policeman. He was a police sergeant, and through his efforts, I finally got to see him, and he explained to me that, well, they say they've got a lot of things against you and all that. What did you do? And I explained to him. He said, my son, I understand. Then later they started interrogating me, which was quite vicious. I will not go into that. And the issue that they really wanted from me was to give evidence against accused number 1, Seth Cooper, Muntu Mieza, accused number 2, Tera Likota, accused number 3, and a number of others. And I refused. And they thought they would use my dad to put pressure on me to agree to become a state witness. I refused. I said, I will not do it. Then I was taken. I was taken to Silverton police station. And when I got there, my neighbor in the adjacent cell was another detainee whose name I am not going to disclose because something horrible happened to him. And they had been working on him to also become a state witness. And he then, through talking through the wall, told me that he has finally agreed to become a state witness. And then I realized why I had been taken to Silverton. My dad came to visit me, and he said, they want you to be a state witness. And I said, Dad, I am not going to do it. I will never betray the comrades that I was working with. And if I did, where will I go and live thereafter? I refused. Now, having refused, my neighbor then went and gave evidence. He gave evidence against Tera Likota and all of them. And as I persisted in my refusal to give evidence, they let me go, but they brought me back and said, we still want you to give evidence. And I persisted in refusing. He gave evidence, the trial went on, it ended, and they were sentenced. And then I was released. Now, you know, when you deal with police, security police, there are 3 things that they want from you. It's either you cooperate with them, you give evidence against your comrades, or you become an askari and go and kill your comrades, or you become a paid agent. I did not do any of the 3 things that they wanted. Not at all. Not at all. And when they released me for the last time, they then said, we want you to work with us. And I still remember who it was. It was Major Haystack. He said, we want you to work with us. And I said, I will never agree to work with you and betray my people. And they said, we will come back to you. The uprising in '76, after my spell of detention, I then joined the Black People's Convention because university would not take me back. So I joined the BPC, which was a black consciousness-oriented organization like SASO, and we continued with the struggle. '76 happens, and on the very day the uprising happened, a knock at 3 o'clock at my father's home sounded on the door, and interestingly, there was a comrade of mine who was later killed by the Venda police. His name was Chifiwa Muope. We were friends at high school and he had come to visit me. And on the 16th, they found him sleeping with me in the dining room. They arrested both of us, and he looked so much like Tsietsi Mashinini. And they immediately said, we've got Tsietsi Mashinini who was leading the uprising. They took me to John Foster Square, where I was for another 6 months. And interestingly, Teralikota, when I got into the cell, I told myself that I am now here for 5 years. Because earlier they'd been threatening me with a 5-year, 10-year jail sentence. And I persisted in refusing to give evidence. And they said, you're going to be like Nelson Mandela, you're going to break rocks on Robben Island. I said, in the end, I would rather go and break rocks, and I will never, ever betray my people. And my father supported me in all this, notwithstanding the fact that he was a police sergeant in the South African police of the time. He supported me. And after I was detained in '76, I was finally released without any charge being preferred to me or against me. Chipiwa Muope was later released because they found that Chipiwa Muope was not Tsietsi Mashinini, and in the end, he was later once detained again and killed by the Venda police. Following that, then my journey led me into the unions where I organized workers. And I want to take time to explain to Julius, Honorable Malema, about the organization of the NUM, because that is another issue that has been raised in the past. And the question has always been, the NUM was an Anglo-American project. That's what has always been raised. And that story started being spread by some within our own ranks who had at the time been given the responsibility to go and organize mine workers. And because their approach had not worked, they then started spreading a story as they saw the NUM growing. Now, how did we organize the NUM? James Mutlatsi, Elijah Bahai, and a number of others, Paul Nkuna, bear testimony to this. We went into the mines, started trying to organize, and mine workers would not join the union. They said, you are insurance agents, why should we come and join the union? And the question they kept on asking, Honorable Malema, have you got permission from management to come and organize us? And we said, no. They said, we don't want to get fired, so we're not going to join your union. And in any event, we think it's an insurance company. And they kept asking me, where do you come from? I would say, I come from Soweto. They said, you are a skellum from Soweto, and we're not going to join this thing of yours. And our initial plans to organize mine workers were failing. And as we saw that they were failing, we decided that rather than organize them in the way, in the streets, in the corners, in the towns, in the buses, we should rather go into the fortress where they are accommodated. Because those days, mine workers were accommodated in fortresses which were impregnable, and you could not go in. And we decided, yes, to go to the Chamber of Mines. And we said, the Vihan Commission has now declared that black mine workers can join unions. We want them to join unions. Give us access, because we do need the access to organize them. And access had been given in a number of other unions. In the factories, offices had been opened in factory environments and what have you. So we said, like it's happening in factories, we want access in the mine hostels. Previous to that, the attempts to organize mine workers, Honorable Malema, had been to try and get them in buses as they are going home in the rural areas, and they had all failed. So we decided that we will take another direction, and we did. We got access, we started organizing mine workers, and they kept asking, do you have permission? We said yes. At the time, Anglo-American and Rand Mines were the only two mining houses that had allowed unions, their workers to join unions. And naturally, the union started growing. And it grew by leaps and bounds. And I've often said to those people who say, you are an Anglo project, I would say, why would Anglo act against its own interests? Because it was Anglo-American which was most severely affected in the strikes that mine workers embarked upon. In 1987, they got the biggest brunt of the strike at the time. So the union grew, and not only did it grow, the NUM was the first union to adopt the Freedom Charter in our country, the very first union. And following that, the NUM was the biggest motivator for the formation of COSATU. And it was the biggest union in COSATU. Now, Honorable Likota and Honorable Malema, you raise these issues and throw around innuendo. You must realize how dangerous this is, like Dr. Motsoaledi said yesterday. The same accusation was made against Nelson Mandela when he was still in prison. Many people said Nelson Mandela was selling out. They said he was selling out because he had agreed to be separated from his comrades and was therefore in Pollsmoor alone, and he was being manipulated and he was selling out. That is the story that was peddled around. But when I met Walter Sisulu, the wise leading comrade of our movement, when I asked him about this, I said, how did you, as the elders of our movement, handle this? They said, we were never concerned about this. We looked at the character of the leader that Nelson Mandela was. That's what we looked at. And having examined his character and seen the commitment that he had made to the freedom of our people, we were least concerned about all that. Now, comrades and members on the other side, these accusations of people selling out have also led to the deaths of people, as Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi said in this very parliament. Now, Honorable Malema, you visited London a few years ago and said that Nelson Mandela was a sellout. And then there were reports, and those reports keep coming, and I was not even intending to raise it here. But I do so because we do need to deal with this issue because it's cancerous. A report that came out was that the EFF is an MI6 project. Now, I rejected that. I rejected that because I knew we were dealing with people of good character, that you would never go to that extent. And they keep coming with the position that one holds now. You keep getting all these innuendos, these accusations, and these suggestions. But in the end, you need to deal with the character of the person. Now, I have rejected those types of statements, Honorable Malema, because I look at you and I look at your character and your commitment to the people of South Africa from the platform that you now occupy. Now, it was O.R. Tambo who warned us that beware of the wedge driver. Watch his poisonous snake. These stories that are spread about people doing that and that are so dangerous. Nelson Mandela had to deal with this issue when he became president of the ANC. And he said, I keep getting all these reports. And he once said, I was his Secretary General, and he said, I get all these reports, and if I were to examine them all, more than half of the members of my NEC, you remember that, more than half the members of my NEC would be regarded as spies. And it would divide the African National Congress, and he added, it would even lead to people getting killed. Now, let us be aware of wedge drivers. Let us be aware of people who want to spread poisonous messages amongst us. I can testify, I have never, ever been a spy. I've never worked with the enemy. All I've ever done in my life is my commitment to the people of our country. That's all. That I've never done. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. We will still come to the end. I'm sure you'll have more time at that point.
Honorable Speaker, we sit here as the representatives of the people of our country. Now, let me deal with that. You say you want us to establish a judicial commission. I have no interest as president of this country to appoint judicial commissions which are going to waste taxpayers' money for nothing. That I will not do. Because the ordinary people of our country know that there is no truth in this. But now we sit here as duly elected members of our parliament to advance the interests of those people who have elected us. We, all of us, have a responsibility, particularly in the months that remain in the term of this parliament and this administration, to do everything within our means to fulfill the mandate that we were given. While many honorable members correctly described the many achievements of the past 25 years of democracy and quantified many of the achievements of this administration, they also drew attention to the great difficulties that still confront many of our people. And that is a reality that we will not run away from. We still confront huge challenges and difficulties, and those are borne on the shoulders of the ordinary poor people in our country. On both sides of the House, members spoke about the conditions of poverty and hardships that many of our people still live under. For although we have raised millions of people out of absolute poverty, although we have built well over 3 million houses and provided water and electricity, there are still more than 2 million families that live in informal settlements, and nearly a third of children under the ages of 5 years who are stunted due to the severe and long-term malnutrition that they experience. We have created more than 7 million additional jobs since the advent of democracy. We, however, concede that this has not kept pace with the number of people entering the job market. As we create jobs, more young people are coming onto the job market, and that is a challenge that we should face collectively as a country. What this debate has made plain is that while we have made remarkable progress, we need to do much more. But more than that, this debate has made it abundantly clear that we cannot continue at this rate. That is why we are working hard across a number of fronts to change the pace and the trajectory of our development so that we can build on the many achievements of the last quarter century. This is why we are working every day to accelerate economic growth and make meaningful progress in finding work for the 9.7 million South Africans who are currently unemployed. We applaud the great initiatives that several of our provinces and many municipalities are undertaking to stimulate economic growth and to create jobs. This includes the work being done by KwaZulu-Natal to support small, medium enterprises for young people, and the work being done in Gauteng through the programs like Tsepo 1 million in providing pathways for young people into the economy of our country. What is clear from many of the statements in this House, from the comments from business leaders, unions, community organizations, from the views expressed also by ordinary South Africans, is that there is a shared determination to move our country forward. This is where South Africans are currently. They want this country to move forward and not backwards. They don't want their country to be stuck in a rut, and therefore they are looking for solutions and proposals that are going to propel our country forward. Now, there is shared determination to ensure that we do whatever is necessary to keep moving forward. There is a shared determination to confront every challenge, no matter how intractable, to take bold decisions, no matter how difficult. This year, we will commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Grahamstown, where Xhosa forces under the leadership of Makhanda took on the might of British invasion force. We also commemorate the Battle of Isandlwana, which took place 140 years ago, where the soldiers of King Cetshwayo inflicted a crushing defeat on the mighty British Empire. These were acts of courage, acts of resistance that will forever be remembered in the history of the struggle of our people. These battles must serve as an inspiration as once again we must confront enormous challenges, this time as a united nation and not as a divided nation. The challenges we face are many, but they are also complex. They are also substantial, and we will require collective and concerted effort to overcome them. If ever there was a time when South Africans need to work together, this is the time. The program we outlined in the State of the Nation address has at its core the needs and the interests of the poor people of our country. It is about creating work. It is about creating business opportunities in the townships, in the rural areas of our country where the poorest people in our country live. We spoke last week about the industrial parks in the townships and rural areas that are being revitalized as part of the effort to turn these into areas of economic activity. This program is about the reliable supply also of water, of sanitation to the villages of our country. It is about the 2.6 million households that benefit from the indigent support system for water. It is also those households that also benefit from the indigent system for electricity. The programs we outlined in SONA is about teaching young people from the most deprived areas of our country to read at a level comparable not only to their compatriots, but also to their peers across the world. We applaud the work being done by the Department of Basic Education to prioritize access to quality education. And we have seen how the education outcomes in our country have been improving over the years. The matric results of last year were a clear testimony that things are changing. We are moving forward without any fail. We applaud the principals and the teachers across the country who daily make it their responsibility to create a better future for our children. We disagree fundamentally with those who say that teachers are the problem. They are not the problem. They are the solution to the education challenges that we face. They are indeed, and we must pay tribute to them and empower them and equip them to be able to do their work even a lot better. Our program is also about protecting communities from gangsters. It is about the work being done by the police together with other departments and agencies to establish anti-gang units that tackle such crime with all the means available to the state. Our program is about providing the social support that the most vulnerable in our society need to survive. It is the successive governments of the African National Congress that have increased the number of social grants to around 17.5 million today. We welcome the work that is being done by the Department of Social Development in revamping the social grant payment system and the role that the Post Office is playing as a state-owned entity in ensuring effective delivery of the social grants that our people are paid. From special economic zones to the Black Industrialist Program, from investor roadshows to Buy South Africa campaign, all our efforts are measured by the impact they have on those in society who have the least. Our programs must be measured first and foremost by the impact that they also have on our children. Though they constitute a third of our population, though they hold within their hands the future of our nation, the voice of our children is seldom heard. They cannot vote, they do not set policy, and are therefore too easily ignored. Yet their interests must be placed at the forefront of our policies. As the Honorable Dlamini Zuma noted, we are putting our children first. This means that we are focusing in a far more coordinated way on the first 1,000 days in every child's life. This is the time when the investment we make in adequate health care, positive socialization, good nutrition, quality child care, a clean and safe environment, and structured early learning will have a profound impact on their chances in life. We welcome the statement by Honorable Godi that the APC stands ready to contribute to the implementation of early childhood development, and we thank you for that. Our programs to improve maternal and child health, to make access to early childhood development universal, to provide grants and nutrition support to the very poor are as important to the economic future of our economy as anything we do in the area of investment, trade, and skills development. We are just as interested in the progress we are making in reducing infant mortality and malnutrition amongst 5-year-olds as we are in the rate of GDP growth or levels of fixed investment. We seek not to separate these. We want to focus on all of these. These are the indicators for us that matter. But we know that we must do more. And indeed, we are doing more to keep our children safe, to protect them from abuse and violence. This means strengthening our approach to community policing, to make the places where children live safe, and intensifying the work already underway to make our police, our prosecutors, and our courts more responsive to the needs of children. The needs of South Africa's children, now and into the future, informs our efforts to build an education system capable of bringing out the best in our learners. We must continue to prioritize our early reading comprehension programs, not only in schools but across society. Minister of Basic Education is always harping on how, as South Africans, we have a very, very weak and low reading culture. And she's always comparing us, for instance, with the Russians, who have possibly the highest reading culture in the world. And her wish is that South Africans must live up to a much higher reading culture. We will soon be launching a project that draws on the vast network of reading initiatives and resources we have in this country to turn South Africa into a reading nation. As we noted in the State of the Nation address, we have a responsibility as a nation to ensure that all South Africans are able, equally and without exception, to enjoy the inalienable rights to life, dignity, and liberty. We know and concede that with respect to the rights of people with disabilities, we have not achieved nearly as enough. We have made massive strides from the welfare approach before 1994 to an approach that seeks to enable all people with disability to access opportunities and achieve their potential. We have put in place policies that give effect to the provisions of our Constitution and that are aligned to the UN conventions and continental plans of action. But as Honorable Bengu Kombe reminded us in clear and certain terms, we are still falling behind in implementation. It is for this reason that we are insisting that the next medium-term strategic framework for 2020 to 2025 should mainstream disability across all government departments and programs. And in the end, this should be accompanied by an integrated information system that is able to track performance against targets. Every state organ should be reporting substantively on the inclusion of people with disability within their respective mandates. Now, we are working with renewed energy and commitment to ensure that people with disabilities are part of a cohesive society. We are working to ensure that they have equitable access to education, health services, employment, social security, and all the opportunities that come with living in a democracy. Next week, I will be chairing the Presidential Working Group on persons with disability to engage on these and other issues. Now, this is really a valuable opportunity for dialogue between government and a section of society that for far too long has not been able to fully realize the promise of our Constitution. If we are a country that prioritizes the interests of the poor and the vulnerable, then we need to act with greater urgency to respond to the effects of climate change and make our contribution in preventing it. The rural poor are most affected by climate change ravages. The droughts that have become more frequent and which last longer affects them much more than people who live in cities. The urban poor are most affected by the impact this has on food prices and the availability of water. And this mother city experienced precisely that just 2 years ago. It is people who live in informal settlements who are most affected by flooding that accompanies the increasing extreme weather conditions. We are all affected in different ways by the environmental challenges and changes that are taking place on land, in our oceans, and in the air. It is time that we too, as South Africans, must take climate change much more seriously. In talking to the Secretary General of the United Nations in Addis Ababa this past few days, when I asked him, what is the biggest issue on your agenda? And he said, climate change is by far the biggest issue on his agenda as Secretary General of the globe. Unless we tackle climate change, we will not be able to meet our developmental objectives. We have ratified the Paris Agreement to combat climate change as part of the global effort to dramatically reduce the rate of global warming. As part of our efforts to build a sustainable low-carbon economy, we are taking steps to finalize the National Climate Change Bill, which will provide a regulatory framework for the management of climate change and its impact. We are making a fair contribution to the global effect to stabilize greenhouse gases through our national determined contribution to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. South Africa is due to be the next coordinator of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, which is vital in ensuring that Africa remains united, but also speaks with one voice on the key climate change issues facing the continent. The progress we have made in responding to various environmental challenges that confront our people is no small measure thanks to the leadership and the dedication of the late Minister of Environmental Affairs, Ms. Edna Molewa. Late Minister Edna Molewa worked ceaselessly to ensure that the conservation of the environment became a catalyst to advance the objectives of the National Development Plan. Taking our lead from her vision, we continue to encourage investment in cleaner energy through the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program. Through the competitive bidding process, South Africa has benefited from rapid global technological developments and price trends, buying clean energy at lower and lower prices with every bid cycle. As a result, South Africa is now getting renewable energy at some of the lowest tariffs in the world. Under the renewable energy, a total number of 112 projects have been procured, and it is envisaged that these projects will create 114,000 job years over the construction and 20-year operations period. A job year is equivalent to a full-time employment opportunity for one person per year. We will work with all stakeholders to ensure that our gradual transition towards new forms of electricity generation, taking into account, yes, our base, which is still fossil fuels, that all these creates jobs, develops new capabilities, and does not negatively affect the livelihoods of the communities where energy is generated. And if there is to be an impact, there should be a just transition process so that we secure the jobs, so that we skill our people, reskill them, and also upskill them, so that as technology changes, they also move with the technological developments that are bound to take place. Now, on the 8th of March, we will be launching a landmark campaign to mobilize all South Africans to become environmentally conscious. Now, the Good Green Deeds program is aimed at changing behavior towards things such as littering, where as South Africans we just scatter and throw litter all over, wherever we walk, wherever we live, and whatever we do. It will also be aimed at addressing illegal dumping that takes place throughout our country, and it will also be aimed at making sure that we manage our waste in a responsible manner. This we will wage. It is part of our call and our commitment to clean South Africa, to make our cities, our towns, and rural areas places where it is safe, where it is healthy to live, to work, and to have leisure. This is something that we would like to undertake on the 8th of March on a whole-scale basis, where every South African is able to pick up a broom, a bag, and make sure that we clean up South Africa and make South Africa clean. Because of an environmentally insensitive human action, the forces of nature conspired to set in motion the dramatic process of climate change. It is by conscious human action that its effects can and will be mitigated and ultimately reversed. Public employment programs have contributed a great deal to enabling us to address the challenges of unemployment that many of our people face. Much as they do not provide permanent work, they have provided meaningful work opportunities through the expanded Public Works Program. The EPWP provides income relief and skills training to young unemployed South Africans, but it also does so to a number of adults as well in our communities. Across a range of sectors, they are carrying out socially useful activities such as road maintenance, construction, and this I saw for myself in the Eastern Cape and in KZN, where a number of women allocate to each other half a kilometer and maintain, close down the potholes, and phenomenal work is being done. In KZN, 40,000 women are involved in this, and it is most meaningful work that all of us as South Africans should applaud on an ongoing basis. They also get involved in land and water use management, waste management, and community crime prevention. It is with a great sense of pride that we were recently able to witness the teams of the EPWP funded program on fire, or working on fire rather, battling the fires across the Cape Mountain Range. These young men and women were exemplary in both their professionalism and in the manner in which they were a reassuring presence to afflicted communities. The success of working on fire shows just what a positive impact the EPWP has had, not only on job creation, but also on mobilizing young people and teaching them useful skills. And since the start of the 5th administration, this program has led to the creation of 3.2 work opportunities at a total of 225 sites across 9 provinces. Now, that has been increasing over the years. The program places an emphasis on skills training to enable participants to find full-time work once they exit the program. In the past financial year, 170 participants were trained as artisans and have qualified as auto electricians, boiler makers, diesel mechanics, fitters, turners, and motor mechanics. Phase 3 of this program will be completed in March this year, and Phase 4 will begin in April. This Phase 4 will target creation of 5 million work opportunities. A collective and a concerted effort by all South Africans to address our challenges means that no person, group or stakeholder should be left out. There is a need to intensify consultation and engagement across society. The views of all stakeholders must be heard, but they must also be counted. They must also know that they count for something. Some have been dismissive of the summits that we've convened over the past 12 months, but these summits, honorable members, have without exception provided platforms for the various people in our country, the social partners, to identify problems and develop solutions. They have, without exception, charted a way forward and established a firm foundation for collective action. Summits by themselves, yes, are not enough. Following these summits, we have embarked on action that is being monitored, that is being measured, that is also being reported. I will soon be convening presidential working groups on labor so that we can engage at a deep level with labor, with business, with the youth, and the social sector, respectively. These provide an opportunity for structured engagement with these key sectors of society to address issues that are of concern to them and to broader society. The unprecedented failure of Eskom's generating capacity over the last few days underlines the severity of the challenges the company faces and the urgency of measures that are needed to address them. For those who have doubted the extent of these challenges, this week's load shedding has provided a hugely damaging reality check. There is no single solution to the problems at Eskom. There just is no one silver bullet. Neither is restructuring, nor refinancing, nor cost-cutting, nor tariff increases, nor better plant maintenance on their own will have necessary effect. We need to pursue all of these measures and more simultaneously in a coordinated fashion and with purpose to turn the utility around. And we will turn it around. The decision we announced in SONA to establish 3 separate state-owned entities. And let me be clear, 3 separate 100% owned state entities. 100% for generation, for transmission, and distribution respectively, has received the most attention, but it is by no means the only or most significant measure that must be undertaken. In his budget speech next week, the Minister of Finance will detail the measures that government will undertake to assist Eskom to stabilize its finances. It has become clear that indeed Eskom does need to be assisted by the state so that it can stabilize its finances, because doing so also means that we are stabilizing the economy of our country. It represents a significant commitment at a time when public finances are severely constrained. It must therefore be accompanied by and must be dependent on a credible, far-reaching turnaround plan that has both an immediate and lasting impact. Now, the leadership of the entity itself has already taken steps to cut costs and to improve efficiency. But much more needs to be done, and it needs to be done much more quickly. One of the tasks that are essential to ensuring secure electricity supply is a dedicated and detailed focus on maintenance. Maintenance doesn't grab headlines. nor does it strike most people as even vaguely interesting, but an effective comprehensive maintenance program, properly funded and led by skilled personnel, is the one thing that stands between reliable electricity supply and darkness. We welcome the measures being undertaken to urgently strengthen this capability. The fundamental principle that must underpin our response to the Eskom crisis is that, yes, it must be inclusive and it must be consultative. We accept as government that we have not done enough to bring some of our key stakeholders, such as labor, on board on the various aspects of this matter, but we are determined to correct this. As social partners, as stakeholders, as a country, we have a common interest in finding sustainable solutions to the crisis at Eskom. And I have been talking to Labour and I've informed them that we are going to have a rather deep conversation with them about Eskom, and this is going to be in the next few days. Now, I say this because we have a collective responsibility. Some sit on the sidelines and criticize. We are in the ring. We are in the arena doing the work, while others pontificate and sit on the side. None of us can abdicate our responsibility, nor anyone should be left out of this process. Where we disagree, we must engage. Let us put the facts on the table. Let us examine the evidence, and let us together find workable solutions rather than pontificate. And I invite all of us, all the key stakeholders, never to give up on finding a solution, and we should never give up on each other as well. And let us reject the false narrative that the only way out of this is through bitter confrontation and conflict, through shouting and screaming from our seats. Our challenges will not be resolved in the streets, but will rather be resolved around the table. As government, we understand the fears of workers about job losses at Eskom, as well as in associated industries. I have a keen understanding of this. We also understand the concerns of lenders, of investors, and business owners. We also address them in as direct a manner as possible. The next weeks and months, yes, are going to be difficult moments for us as we effect the changes that need to be made. It is our responsibility to ensure that through this process, we take the greatest care to minimize the negative impact on the most vulnerable in our society, in the townships of our country, in the rural areas, the workers, emerging farmers, small business owners, and employers of our people. In tackling this urgent and serious matter, let us be cautious of reckless claims and political posturing. There are sound, and valid, and compelling reasons to effect this change we're talking about. It is to look at the business model of Eskom and see what will work best. It is not a path to privatization. I repeat, it is not a path to privatization. Restructuring will reduce the risk of a massive Eskom that at times has, in its current form, been termed too big to fail, placing government in a position where all our eggs are in one basket. Now, the breakdown of 6 units immediately takes out 4,000 megawatts and has an overarching impact on not only the economy of our country, but the lives of our people. Now, this happens because we've got all our eggs in one basket. This restructuring will align Eskom with international electricity trends, where the vertically integrated electricity utilities have been broken up to enable better regulatory oversight through a single buyer model, increased competition, and making sure that the risks are minimized. A good example of this has been in a number of countries, even on our own continent. A unitary Eskom has proven to be too difficult to lead. Looked at just ordinarily, it is by any means the largest enterprise in our country. It has gone through a number of board and executive leadership iterations without trending towards a sustainable operational path. Ultimately, this process is intended to ensure security of electricity supply for the country, which is critical to building on the positive investor sentiment and confidence essential for investment required so sorely so that we can create jobs. And in the end, Eskom in its current form faces a number of challenges. In the end, we need also to look at the financing of Eskom. Financially, the reference to cost-cutting should be understood not to mean retrenchments. The preferred strategy in reducing human resources costs, in the end, is not what would ordinarily be the preferred route. We further need to look at the benefits that this whole process will yield for us as we restructure Eskom. Operationally, Eskom's plant age is an average of 37 years and has seen some of the engineers that have been trained to maintain these legacy systems exit the business, and those are some of the challenges that we face in Eskom. Some of those experienced technical professionals have been traced to other parts of the world, and responding to the Tumamina call, they have indicated that they want to come back home, to come and assist us to show up Eskom. Now, in the meantime, what we need to do, as you scream and shout, what we need to do is to aggressively put the load shedding behind us. The teams assembled by the presidency, the Minister of Public Enterprises, and the Eskom board need to prioritize building up of adequate electricity generation safety margin to ensure the national grid is restored to a state of robustness, able to withstand the demands that will be placed on it by new industrial capacity. We all need to agree on the roadmap with concrete actions in the short, immediate, and long term to achieve an end state of an electricity secure country. While restructuring Eskom won't solve the immediate electricity supply crisis, it will position the company to more effectively meet the country's energy needs into the future. It will also help us in simplifying management, but more importantly, it will also enable funders to better assess the risk and opportunity and open space for new investment in generation capacity on an urgent basis. I have constituted a special cabinet committee on Eskom, which will be led by the Deputy President, consisting of the Minister of Public Enterprises, Energy, Finance, Transport, SSA, and the police, to be seized with the matter of Eskom on a daily basis and to provide me with reports daily on what actions need to be taken to secure energy supply. Honorable members, we are going to embark on these steps, and I'd like to say to South Africans that we approach this with the seriousness that it deserves, and we will take all the necessary actions to ensure that South Africa is energy secure, that we deal with the challenges that Eskom is going through right now, and ensure in the end that it does not do any damage to our economy. Now we are at a moment in our history where we need to make difficult choices. Public finances are constrained, and we will hear this more clearly when Minister Tito Mboweni delivers his budget next week. Our capacity to borrow is extremely limited. It is therefore necessary for us to prioritize and to make trade-offs. We need at this time to direct our resources to those programs that have the greatest impact on poverty alleviation, job creation, and economic growth. We need, as several honorable members have said, to trim the fat, to reduce expenditure that is not essential, to realize our priorities, to cut down on wastage and uncontrolled spending. Simply put, we need to be efficient in our use of financial resources. We are determined and committed to getting value for our money through better systems, improved productivity, and consequences for non-performance. The Public Audit Amendment Act significantly empowers the Auditor General to act more directly against those who squander and misappropriate public funds. We will have already started work to ensure that the outcomes of investigations by the Special Investigation Units are more rigorously and speedily acted upon. And in the end, I wish to make it quite clear for those, as I dealt with the issue of the National Prosecuting Agency, who said the scorpions are back. The scorpions are not back. We are setting up, as allowed by the National Prosecuting Act, a special investigating unit in the prosecuting directorate. And these are going to be focused on specific areas that need proper investigation that will lead to prosecution without any fail and on an immediate basis. Now, those who have benefited from the injustices of the past have a crucial role to play in ensuring that they are redressed. Those who have had opportunity to accumulate assets, gain skills, and acquire or inherit networks have both a responsibility and a vested interest in using these capabilities to improve the lives of our people. Companies that hold cash reserves have a powerful incentives and an increasingly beneficial environment to invest in productive capacity and activity that creates jobs and thereby expands local demand and promotes social stability. We have a system of taxation that is premised on the principle of social solidarity. Those who earn more should contribute proportionately more to the public purse. As is evident over the last year, we are committed to strengthen this critical instrument of redistribution and are taking firm measures to reduce the potential for abuse, either through corruption or tax evasion. The national health insurance is an important area where social solidarity can be most effective. Because of the dual nature of healthcare provision in South Africa, with huge disparities between private and public expenditure and huge differences in health access, there is a strong social as well as an economic argument for a more equitable distribution of health spending. It is for this reason that we have consulted widely with all relevant stakeholders and are now on the track to finalize the National Health Insurance Bill for submission to Parliament. It is premised on the morally compelling belief that access or lack thereof to quality healthcare service must not be determined by one's socioeconomic status. Once fully implemented, the NHI will bring to life the spirit of human solidarity, where through the principle of cross-subsidization, the young subsidize the old, the healthy subsidize the sick, and the rich subsidize the poor. Given the urgency with which we must attend to the challenges of our healthcare system, we convened the first Presidential Health Summit in October last year and brought together key stakeholders from a wide range of constituencies in the sector. We emerged from the summit with very sound, immediate, short-term and long-term solutions to improve the effectiveness of the health system. We had the opportunity 2 days ago to launch the report of the summit, which contains elaborates on the solutions we want to take. The report also provides more information on the practical steps we are taking to deal with, among other things, the health of our workforce, supply chain management, the medical products, equipment and machinery, and infrastructure planning. Solidarity needs to extend beyond our borders as well. Those who have been freed from the chains of oppression, those who live in conditions of liberty and democracy, have a responsibility to those who struggle against occupation, discrimination, and repression. Our support for the struggle of the Palestinian people is not merely a product of history. It is a refusal to accept that a people should be continually denied the right of self-determination in violation of international law. Next month, we will be hosting a SADC Solidarity Conference in support of the struggle of the Sahrawi people against the colonial occupation of their territory. We do so because we believe in the inalienable rights of all people to freedom and to dignity, and because we are convinced that unless all people are freed from the chains of oppression, the world will never know peace, stability, or inclusive prosperity. This is the last debate on the state of the nation in terms of the fifth democratic parliament. I was heartened to hear a number of members saying, Mr. President, after the elections, we want you to have so many departments in government, to appoint this type of minister and so forth, thus acknowledging that the African National Congress is coming back as the leader of government once again. So I thank you for those accolades. I thank you because you are already mapping out our task as we will return in the next administration. I think, Mr. Maimani, your seat is now going to be right at the back when we come back. In just under 3 months, all of us will exercise the cherished right to vote that we won 25 years ago. We should expect that parties will campaign vigorously and loudly. As in any healthy democracy, we should expect a fierce contestation between parties, between different perspectives and divergent presentations of reality. However, no matter how robust the campaigning, we need to avoid utterances or actions that divide South Africans. As political parties, as leaders, we must desist. Thank you for agreeing, Mr. Maimani. We must desist from statements that demean or insult or offend other races, other languages, other religions, or other groups. We agree, and I totally agree with Honorable Buthelezi when he says, never before have we seen such a deluge of racial slurs and divisive talk from leaders of our nation. We share a responsibility to unite our country. No matter how much and how enthusiastically we disagree ahead of the election, we equally share a responsibility to accept the popular mandate of the people of South Africa. We equally share responsibility to work together to build a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it. In those difficult and trying times, we share a responsibility to work together for the people of this country, for ordinary families who struggle to make ends meet, to come up with ways to stretch their rands just like little bit further for homes, for school fees and put food on the table, for the men and women who perform the services that keeps our country going, our teachers, our police, our nurses, our doctors who get up every morning to go and do their work. We share a responsibility to support them in the work that they do. For the young men and women of this country who have not yet found employment, but who still go out, their CVs in hand, knocking on doors, making calls and sending emails. For the students who have to take an extra job to finance their studies and return home late and exhausted, but remain committed to finishing their education. It is upon these people that the future of this country really in the end depends. To them, the people of South Africa, we say, it is your hopes and your expectations that we carry with us. We have felt your frustration and we have heeded your calls for real change. We are determined to rectify the mistakes of the past, improve the conditions of the present, and to work with you side by side to make this, our South Africa, a land of prosperity for all. A land in which the noble values of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights are the canvas upon which we chart a new and glorious future, not just for ourselves, but those yet to come. And I can say that to all those South Africans who so depend on us who are seated here, we will try everything we can not to fail you. Honorable members, we gather here as the representatives of the people of this country, duly elected to advance their interests and to give expression to their will. As we conclude this debate, we should reflect on our individual and collective contributions to building a new and better society. And as we conclude, we would do well to reflect on the words of the Nigerian author Ben Okri in his poem on the new dream for politics, where he says, "They say there is only one way for politics, that it looks with hard eyes at the hard world and shapes it with a ruler's edge, measuring what is possible against acclaim, support, and votes. They say there is only one way to dream, for the people to give them not what they need, but food for their fears. We measure the deeds of politicians by their time in power. But in ancient times, they had another way. They measured greatness by the gold of contentment, of enduring arts, the laughter at the hearths, the length of silence when the bards told of what was done by those who had the courage to make their lands happy, away from war, spreading justice and fostering health, the most precious of the arts of governance. But we live in times that have lost this tough art of dreaming, the best for its people, or so we are told by cynics and doomsayers who see the end of time in blood-red moons. Always, when least expected or unexpected, figure rises when dreams here have become like ashes. But when the light is woken in our hearts along the way, sleep they wonder if it is a fable. Can we still seek the lost angels or our better natures? Can we still wish and will for poverty's death and a newer way to undo war and find peace in the labyrinth of the Middle East and the prosperity in Africa as the true way to end the feared tide of immigration? We dream of a new politics that will renew the world. Under the weary, suspicious gaze, there's always a new way, a better way that's not been tried before. And we are saying, let us embark on a new way, and perhaps a way that has never been tried before, and it is up to all of us to make that way possible for our people. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the gallery of exhibitors participating in the expo hosted by Parliament on the 4th Industrial Revolution. Included amongst them are the gold medal winners of the Walt Disney Award for Imagination and Creativity for their design of the spring boats. You are welcome in the gallery, and thank you very much for your exhibitions.
We thank you, Mr. President. Honorable members, this concludes the debate on the State of the Nation address and the business for the day. The joint sitting is adjourned.